Hey everyone, this week we're going to be looking at how you can fix the geometry in your architectural photography. So this week I've come out to Sheffield. I'm going to be doing some architectural photography of the buildings here, and later on we're going to get those images on the computer and we're going to look at how they are sometimes distorted, particularly by wide-angle lenses, and how we can fix that in post-processing. So I brought with me a wide-angle lens, the Nikkor Z 14 to 30mm. I'm mostly going to be using that, but I've also got a 24 to 200, so I can get in close to the 200 and pick out some detail if I want to. So let's have a little walk around now, see what I can find, and like I said, later on we'll get them on the computer and have a look at those. Most of the issues that we're going to get are caused by perspective. Unless you really square onto your subject, you're going to find that tilting upwards or downwards, particularly with a wide-angle lens, is going to cause perspective distortion. So you're going to find that the buildings look like they're falling over, or you've got verticals that are converging to a point, and that's what we're aiming to fix today. So you'll notice here when I'm straight on to my subject, the verticals look pretty straight, but as I move the camera upwards, they appear to converge and the building looks like it's leaning backwards, and the left and right points at the top are getting closer and closer together. So that's what we want to try and fix later. Later on when we fix these, we're probably going to have to crop in a little bit, so it's best to leave a little bit of extra space around your subject, more than you normally would. Okay, so I've got plenty of images now, let's head back, I'll get these on the computer and we'll look at how we can fix the geometry and the distortion in those images. Okay, so we're going to look at this image first. One of the first things that you might want to do is just come down to the lens corrections panel here tick this box next to enable profile corrections, then just drop this menu down here, and if your lens is supported you should be able to choose your lens from that list, and it will automatically apply some corrections to reduce any extreme vignetting or distortion that might be present in the lens by default. You'll see that I've got built in here, and that's a feature that's quite common in mirrorless lenses, and it certainly is in the Z lenses that I'm using. And that's basically a profile that's built into the lens itself, and you can't turn that off. So it doesn't really matter if I untick that box or not, but it is worth checking this panel out to see if the lens that you're using is supported, because it might help out before you have to come to some of the more extreme transform tools that we're going to look at next. And those are just down here in this panel, like I said, transform, and we've got a number of options here: off, which is how it is now, auto, guided, level, vertical and full, and then underneath we've got a series of sliders. So if we go to auto, that's usually the one you want to come to first, just to see what it does. It's done a good job of analysing the scene, applying some auto settings, and they're usually pretty good. Here it has done an okay job, but I think some of the verticals are just slightly off still, and we can see that it has cropped off the foreground area at the bottom of the image here. So we've got guided, which I'm going to come back to later. We've got level, which will correct for left and right distortion, but I'm going to come back to that later as well. We've got vertical, that will correct for left and right as well as up and down distortion. And you see that one I think has done a better job. We've got straighter verticals. We haven't cropped off the bottom of the image, although we have lost some areas on the left and right here. That's not a massive problem. We could either clone those if they weren't too extreme, or we could come up to the crop panel and we could just crop those areas out like that. But we can also look at the full option. So this will also correct for left and right and up and down distortion, but it's a bit more extreme because it will also apply perspective effects. So you see it will really try to make all of the horizontals perfectly horizontal, like this one here, as well as the verticals, and that creates this extreme perspective effect, which can look good in some circumstances, but I think here it just looks a little bit too stretched on this right hand side foreground area. So I'm going to go back to vertical. I think that's the best option here, and I'll probably just crop in. Like that, and that would be my final image. So we'll take a look at the level tool now. If we look at this image, I was using the 24 to 200mm lens here at the 200mm end, just zooming in, getting a little bit of detail on these balconies, and I was shooting handheld, so I didn't get it quite level, and you'll see that we've got a little bit of a slant with these balconies leaning in a little bit towards the left. So we can quickly sort that out just by coming down to level, and that does a good job of straightening those out, making them really nice and horizontal. And this is also a good tool for straightening out any wonky horizons if you've got those. And so finally we'll take a look at this image. Now if we go to auto, that looks a little bit better, but you'll see it's still not quite right, still looks like it's leaning backwards. We could go to vertical, but that looks a little bit too extreme, as does full. So what we're going to try here is guided. So I'll click here, and that automatically activates a tool which allows us to draw some lines in the image. If the tool is not activated, you can just click in this little circle here. And what we want to do is draw two lines which will tell Lightroom what areas or in what way to make the image vertical. So if we say we want this pillar here on the left to be vertical, and also this pillar here on the right, it will do its stuff, and there you see we've got a very vertical image. Now that doesn't look quite right, it's a little bit stretched at the top, So we can tweak this by coming down to the sliders underneath, and we can just bring the aspect down until it looks a little bit more plausible. That's maybe too much now. So I think that's looking not too bad. And these sliders, you can do all kinds of things with them. You can play around with the rotation and the scale, move it left and right with the offsets. If you click constrain crop, that will mean that you don't have any white areas at the edge of your image. And so these can be used to fine-tune any of the options above, or just create really funky effects. So there you go, that's how you can use the transform panel in Lightroom to help fix the distortion in your images. But remember, just because you can do this, it doesn't mean you necessarily should. I quite like some images that have extreme distortion or perspective, particularly for architectural images, and that can create a really interesting and artistic shot. But when you do need an image that is really straight, looks really true to life, how you would see it with your eye, and the lens that you've been using has just distorted that too much, then these are really useful tools. So check them out. That's about it for this video, so a massive thanks for watching everyone. I put loads of time and effort into making these, so I really do appreciate it when you put the time and effort in to watch them as well, so thanks for that. But if it is the first time you've watched the channel and you're not yet subscribed and you'd like to do so, you can just click down there on the big red button, or over here on this picture of me, and that way you'll keep up to date with everything I'm doing each and every week. There's a new video every Sunday morning at 10 AM UK time. So I hope you'll join me next week for the next one. Until then, thanks a lot everyone, and bye for now.